Hi, Professor Sorensen and teaching staff. My name is Larry Van Deusen, and this is my final project video. The project that I chose to try to build was based on a use case, a scenario where if you could potentially answer a few questions about yourself and a potential spouse using some data analytics based on some research that was done and some analysis based on 30 different criteria of question, would you then have a scoring factor that I coined ringworthy to decide if you should marry or you should not? And the idea being that divorce is an expensive value proposition. So this is my program, and what I tried to do, and I am no data scientist, and this was probably in hindsight much more complex than I had initially thought, was build a data structure that would allow me to then analyze against that database, the data set. And the data set that I downloaded it off of Kaggle, was 10,000 rows that I expanded. And it has these 30 criteria: the age gap, education, economic, social stimulus. These are some of the criteria. And as a combination of and float values that were scored based on that. Some of them being values from 0 to 5, others being more of a percentage value. The goal was, as these objects are compared as in a data structure of type person, you could then have a target value that would look up on row 31, which was the divorce probability. So to look through and analyze against all these rows and columns and then come out with an output. So what my program does is it reads in a file name and it creates a structure. I created a class structure called person. And in the person structure, I initialized all the values to 0. And I have the 30 criteria parameters and the questions that would actually be asked. Then I read in the CSV file and I input it into the different rows and then the targets, and it's delimited by commas. I have functions that then convert some of the questions in the edge into the matrix, so that the inputs that are taken from the user are then transposed or converted into percentages or numbers, so that they can be stored in a target file, which would be the data structure file, against the inputs. So each of these has different values that I would call the functions. And then the main program kicks off by getting the input, doing some error correction, and then looking at this get person info, which prompts the user to input first data about themselves, and then it asks questions about their particular spouse. The next part of the function is to calculate the similarity or difference between the two values and the two types of objects that are created, the self and the other, or yourself and your spouse, and then finding the closest matches in the inputs and the targets, iterating through each input value, and then calculating the closest distance of that target. And the program is driven by the main kickoff that then calls the classes, asks for different various versions, creates the inputs in the rows, calculates the ringworthiness, and then ultimately comes and prints out a yes, you are ringworthy, or no, you should not get married. Like I said, this is how the program would run: ask for your name, and then start asking questions. Unfortunately, I didn't have the capability of actually getting the program to work, in the sense that it could calculate the values. Somehow the logic in some of my functions, and I guess maybe it's just my lack of knowledge or programming experience with data objects or data structures, and being able to look up rows in the file. But I was able actually to get the inputs and be able to do that, but unfortunately I couldn't do the lookup.